All right, so we are in for a treat with my former cross country coach from Cheltenham High School, Coach Tom Sexton. It's truly a pleasure for me to interview you, Tom. And obviously, being my first interview, I think this is a great place for me to start. So I'll ask you a couple of questions, and we'll keep this free flowing, and yeah, we'll kind of go from there. So the first question that I want to ask you, Tom, is tell me about yourself and what you got going on now.
Okay, so I'll take you through a typical day. How's that?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so my day begins with meditation,
Okay.
uh, kind of getting present to myself, kind of get grounded. Because as soon as you get out of bed, there's going to be distractions. It might be conflicts that you're dealing with in your own life. It might be your thinking. Our thinking can take us in all sorts of directions. So I want to get grounded and centered, excuse me, before the day begins, so that when I go through the day, I can be present to it and I won't be distracted. So my day begins with meditation. And I don't know if you remember, John, but one play that I used to teach was called Our Town by Thornton Wilder. And in the play, a woman named Emily dies very young, and then she's given a chance to come back to Earth for one day.
Okay.
And she comes back to Earth for one day, and she is appalled at how casually people are living their lives, acting like they have forever. And so it's so painful for her to see that she has to go back. She has a perspective from eternity. And I used to teach that to my students because I wanted to try to bring home how precious each day is and how we have to make the most of it because none of us know how much time we have.
Right.
So I try to live that myself. I'm certainly 83. I have more days behind me than I have ahead of me. So I don't want to mess around with my life, but no one should be messing around with their lives, really, when you think about it.
Right.
So my day begins with meditation, and I want to get as much out of this life of this day as I can. I want to be living according to my own priorities and my own values. And so that's the way my day begins. Also, I'm also a spiritual person. So that meditation would include some prayer. Also, I do a lot of reading. Some of it's spiritual, some of it's philosophical. I'm reading a book on Lincoln right now, Abraham Lincoln, which is very inspiring.
Hmm.
So my life is very rich. That's how it begins. I live here. I have a wonderful wife, Marge. We've been married 40 years. I have a lot of good people in my life, a lot of good former runners and students I keep in touch with. And I'm very grateful. I have our health. We have our health. We can travel. So I have so many wonderful people in my life that I feel very, very grateful and very blessed.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm actually very encouraged that you do that. There's a book that I read by Hal Elrod. It's called The Miracle Morning. The acronyms is SAVERS. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the book, but yeah, it actually starts off with silence. So S is for silence, A is for affirmations, V is for visualization, E is for exercise, R is for reading, and S is for scripture, like scribing.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, you pretty much hit all the facets of what a lot of the successful people are doing. So Hal Elrod, he got that book from studying the greatest entrepreneurs and athletes, whether it was, Bill Gates or, like a Steve Jobs or Warren Buffett. And he pretty much implemented everything in one book. And it's a very easy read. I'll actually put it in the description for our audience as well. But yeah, that's awesome. So tell me about, I obviously did tell me about yourself and how you start your morning. But really, like in detail, tell me about yourself and what you used to do. Obviously, you were my cross country coach. You were a former teacher at Cheltenham High School, and like your journey from how you started, how you got there and obviously to where you are now.
Okay. So the second question is a good one. I graduated from high school in 1956, Camden Catholic High School over in Camden, New Jersey, and I immediately went into the Marine Corps. And I was in the Marine Corps for a couple of years. And then from 1959 to 1963, I was in the seminary studying to be a priest.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And yeah, I was up in Canada. I went to college up in Canada. That was a great experience. But I knew I wanted to have a family, so I left after 4 years and I got my degree from Villanova. And then I immediately started teaching English and Latin. And I started my coaching and teaching career in Pittman, New Jersey, over in South Jersey. And then after 2 years, I went to Cheltenham High School, strictly as an English teacher. I started coaching basketball at Pittman, but then I switched to cross country at Cheltenham. And then I taught there for the next 35 years, taught English, and I coached there for the next 51 years. So I had a great career as a teacher and a coach. I wrote a book on coaching, and that's what I did. That's how I got to where I was and where I am now, actually.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Because I know, when we were talking off record, I know that you had a couple of classes at Cheltenham at the adult school. This was a while back, maybe like 10 years ago. And I was meaning to attend some of those classes. I think it was on leadership. So, I mean, people don't really know, but like I considered you to be like a legend, you know what I mean? And there are a lot of quotes that that actually like I get from you that I actually say within my community, and they always ask like, where you get that from? I say I got that from my cross country coach, or some of them actually came from Dr. Beal, the track coach. So like
Yeah.
it's just a combination of both. So it's truly for me as a believer as well. It's truly a blessing to have you part of my life, and that's why I think this is awesome.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for those kind words. And yeah, you talk about a great leader and a very good man and a spiritual man who's been good for kids. That's Dr. Beal, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's also considered obviously to be a legend as well. So yeah, I mean, just for our audience, how did we meet? I mean, like, explain that to me. I mean, I can briefly explain from my point perspective. I know that you were really good at recruiting. That was like one of your strongest skills, other than obviously teaching leadership and community. I know you were really good at recruiting because I don't know how you obtained everyone's mile time. That was one of the things you did, right, Coach?
I did, yeah. I went around to the gym classes and got their mile times from the gym teachers. You guys used to go out in the track and
Right.
they would time you. So I got the mile times, yeah.
Right. So I remember you legitimately called me, and this is when like cell phones were kind of like it was pretty like you had a cell phone, but not everyone had one. But I like for a coach to go out their way to call me, I thought that was awesome because you were very intentional. So for me, that was like a great experience, just that alone. But yeah, I would love to hear your perspective on that as well.
Well, it's interesting, John, because you have to do a lot of recruiting to get kids to come out for cross country. So I would get the times from gym class. I would also go over to Cedarbrook and get the eighth graders.
Yeah.
And then I found out later, just what you said, someone said, well, when a coach calls you, it makes you feel very important. And that phone call meant so much to me. So I would always follow up. I would meet the student and I would follow up with a phone call, or I would begin with a phone call with mile times and then back that up. Like sometimes we would have a pizza party to get the guys together to talk about the benefits of running cross country.
Right.
But I had to do a lot of recruiting all the time to keep the numbers up and to have good teams. And then I would get really good kids like you who were pretty good athletes, had decent speed, but more importantly, were capable of making a commitment. Kids
Right.
were senior, and kids were pretty good. I think I got the best kids in the school in terms of good grades, good students, and also kids who are capable of carrying out a commitment. And cross country is not an easy sport, as you know. So
Right.
that's how I got you, and that's how I got a lot of guys by going out there, getting the mile times, calling them up, and seeing if they were receptive to our program. And you were, to your credit, you were open to that.
Yeah, and one thing that I felt very appreciative, Coach, is that you recruited me my junior year. So my junior year is when I started. So like I was kind of like already like I think from a perspective of like grooming someone, it would be better to get a freshman.
Yeah.
But for you to like consistently always check up with me and call me and making me feel important. That was one of the things that I truly remember, and that's why I always put you at like at a high level and a high standard of coaches. So thank you.
Yeah, and you were very coachable too, John. You know, some guys are more coachable than others, and you were really willing to do the workouts, willing to come to practice. You know, you wanted to be on a team, and you were willing to work hard. So you made my job easier. Some guys are not that way, and some guys are a little slower in their development and not willing to work hard and come to practice late. And you
Right.
were not. You were very easy to coach. I appreciate that too.
Yeah, I mean, let's actually dive into that as far as like coaching goes. Obviously, I consider to you be an expert in coaching. So, what is a common myth about your job as a coach, and your field of expertise as a coach?
What question is that, John?
What's a common myth? Like, what's a common
Oh,
myth
yeah,
as a
okay.
coach?
Yeah, I got a good myth. Here's a good myth. Excuse me. Some people say, "Oh, you're very good." Excuse me. Some people say, "Oh, you're very good. You're a natural. You're a natural teacher. You're a natural coach." In my case, that's a myth because to make something look easy takes a load of preparation. So if you came to my classroom or you came to one of my practices, it would look very relaxed. It would look like, hey, that guy's just really good at what he does. People have no idea the amount of hours that I would have to put in before I walked into that classroom with my lesson plans or before I walked out onto that track with my workouts. So for me, it just takes so much preparation to be good at anything. And I think hard work is probably more of a factor than talent.
Mm,
So I had good classrooms and I had good workouts, but boy, I had to really prepare them ahead of time.
mhm.
And so I think there's a myth that maybe it comes naturally, but in my case, I can't do anything unless I put a lot of preparation into it ahead of time. For example, last week, 2 weeks ago, I had to give a presentation and make a speech, and uh, and I got up there and I made a presentation, and someone came up afterwards and said, "Wow, you are such a natural speaker. You made it look so easy." I said, "Do you realize I just spent 6 hours this morning before I got here preparing that?" He said, "You're kidding." I said, "I would be scared to death to get up in front of a group if I wasn't totally prepared."
Right.
So for me, preparation is a way of overcoming fear of speaking in public, for example. It just you have to prepare and prepare so you really know it, and then you feel more comfortable.
Yeah, so the key takeaways would be obviously preparation and it sounds like hard work.
Yeah, but if you like what you're doing, you don't mind doing it, you know?
Of course, of course. So the other question I wanted to ask is, who has been your professional mentor?
I started out, I played basketball in college, so running was not my background. I didn't know a lot about running.
Okay.
And so I was a new coach at Cheltenham, and I was not having a lot of success. I was going to some clinics and I was working hard, but I really needed to know more. I needed more knowledge. And I started reading about this young coach named Tom Donnelly, who was coaching at LaSalle High School. And he had just won a championship at Archbishop Wood, and he was winning championships at LaSalle. So I called him up, and he invited me over, and he opened up his workouts. And here he was a 9-time All-American from Villanova, and he ran under a real legend of a coach named Jumbo Elliott. So
Right.
he opened up his notebooks, and he said, "Well, let's see now. How can we take these workouts and adapt them? How can I help you adapt them to your high school program?" I felt like I struck gold. Here is this great runner, this great coach, really willing to come over and share his workouts with me. He's still at Haverford College. He's now a Hall of Fame coach. He turned out to be one of my best friends, but it began with a little, my reading the paper of success, and then my going over and him, and my program changed immediately as soon as I got his workouts because he really knew what he was doing.
Right.
And my program turned around, and then it began to become very successful. And I kept with him over the years. He would help me fine tune my workouts. So I knew I was giving my runners the best workouts, really, from the most knowledgeable person out there. So he
Right.
was my mentor, and now he's one of my best friends.
Yeah, I felt like your ability to connect with people was so good that I know that our program, our Cheltenham program, the cross country program, also had a pretty good connection with the Haverford College. So I remember, I forgot his name. I apologize because I can't completely remember, but I do remember you brought in a runner, and he gave us some pretty good tips. And like I still remember what his tip was. His tip was, if you were gonna pass somebody, you like pass them. You don't jog next to them. You actually just you're deliberately gonna pass the guy. And I remember one of the things he also mentioned was hills. If you're going up a hill, you're gonna like that's where you actually pass people typically, because people typically slow down on hills. So those are the two key takeaways that I still remember. Obviously, I don't run nearly as much as I did in high school, but those are the key takeaways I definitely still remember to this day.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because once I got connected to Tom Donnelly, and then he would come to speak at our banquet, well, it's just a matter of time before some of my runners would be interested in his program. And
Right.
actually, and we would take the kids up to the Poconos every summer and have a camp up there for a week. So one of my first runners was Mark Jondot. He went there and he ran for Tom Donnelly, ended up being captain. And Dan Zabara, Scott Sargrad. I had about Kurt Mangles. I had about 5 or 6 runners who went to Haverford and developed very nicely under Tom Donnelly. So, and they would come back, as you say, and talk to the team,
Right.
and they knew a lot. You know, they learned a lot from Tom. They were competitive runners, and so they would talk to you guys and help you become better runners too.
Right. And that's again, that's something that I felt like I don't know any kind of community team, like especially with a sport that you provided in our program. So that's again, thank you. Uh,
Yeah.
the other question I wanted to ask was, what's an insult you received that you're actually proud of?
You know, I drew a blank on that one, John. I'm not saying I've never been insulted, but I think I had maybe conveniently forgot any insult that came my way. So
Yeah.
I don't have a response to that question. Sorry.
I I think it's really hard to insult someone of your character. I like to have some of these questions just to make it interesting, because I like to try to interview interesting people. So that's why I asked.
Okay,
We can just go to the next question. So, what do people misunderstand about you the most?
that's a good question. I can answer that one.
Sure.
Uh, if you know people who know me, I'm very laid back. I'm
Right.
very laid back, sort of quiet. I don't look at all intense, and but people don't realize that underneath that quiet layer, I am intensely competitive. I am very competitive, and I bring that to my coaching. And so people sometimes don't understand, you know, very often very competitive coaches are very fiery, and sometimes they lose their temper and they're out there yelling in their runners' faces. And that was never my approach. And so people don't realize that beneath that calm exterior is I'm very intensely competitive. So that's a little misunderstanding that people have sometimes.
No, I do remember you a moment of fire that you had. I don't know how I remember these things, but I still remember. Uh, I think intentionally you didn't want us runners to be wearing headphones. So while either we were running, or while we were on the bus to go to our meet, and I remember I had the headphones in. You asked me politely to take it off, and I fell asleep and I put it back on. And you you woke me up, but when you woke me up, you were pissed. Like you were, I was like, wow, I've never seen Coach this pissed. So that was a pretty scary moment for me. I do remember that moment.
One thing that comes to mind is I always felt like runners put enough pressure on themselves
Right.
during the race. So during the race, a lot of coaches would be screaming at the kids they went by, and I would try to find a spot maybe a half a mile away where it's nice and quiet. And as they would go by, I would just try to say something very affirming, like, "Hey, you know what? Your form looks good. You're running a good race." Try to calm them down, because very often athletes get so uh, inspired or maybe nervous even that it interferes and they don't run relaxed. So I always tried to get my guys to run relaxed, and I was not one of the in-your-face coaches, even though I got in your face that day with your story there.
Yeah, no, you were exactly who you were, but it was a moment of surprise because I was like, oh wow, coach actually got a little spice to him. So that was
That's a
that was
funny
to
story.
me it was a little shocking because you are normally, like you said, a pretty laid back person.
All
Uh,
right.
but yeah, I do remember that moment. But yeah, the next question, when looking to develop leadership skills, obviously I view you as a leader. Our community here in Cheltenham definitely viewed you as a leader. Um, when looking to develop leadership skills, what are one or two things someone should focus on?
Well, I'm really big on people working on themselves, developing yourselves. For example, John, with your Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, right? That's a really wonderful self development thing you're into there.
Yes, it
So I
is.
think as we have all this potential. We can develop socially, intellectually, spiritually, whatever that means to you, emotionally, psychologically. We have all this potential inside us, and I think the more we try to make ourselves an interesting person, the more we read and learn and develop whatever areas appeal to you. I think we can do that our whole lives, and I think that's a very important thing, to work on your own development. But at the same time, you want to empower other people too. You want to help other people. You want to get out of yourself and be like what you're doing, like you're working for the community here. And so you want to certainly always be developing yourself and having your own development as one of your priorities, but also always giving back, always trying to figure out you know how you can help other people along the way. You want to be good for other people. And I
Hmm.
think whatever job you go into, if you sort of just reach out to people and show an interest in them, and try to just be a careful, kind, thoughtful person, that's going to serve you well in life. So I would say your own development and also the development of others. uh, I would also say, again, this whole thing about being mindful. Very often, teachers are very guilty of this, and we can all do this in our conversations. We can all just fill the air up with words. We can just talk and talk and not even be mindful of what we're saying. And so it gets back to that whole mindfulness thing we talked about earlier. Just try to be just try to be mindful of your own words and actions. I like to have what I call a self-reflection journal at the end of the day, or you go back at the end of the day and you say, well, how did I do today? And you look back at your interactions with other people and you say, you know what? I think I better go back and talk to that person again. I don't like how I handled that. Or next time, I think I better stay away from that topic, just to kind of be a reflective person. And I think that's important. And also, I think I look back at my teaching, I think, I know there were days when I went in there and just talked too much and filled the air up with words. And you can do that. You can do that, especially in a leadership position. You can just go on, and no one's going to challenge you to shut the heck up and listen for a while. So I also think it's important to listen, to really listen. Uh, Sometimes we hear, but we don't listen. So I would say to young people, you know, be a reflective person, be interested in your own development and helping others develop, and uh, and also be a good listener. So there are just some of the things that came to my mind when I thought of that question.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that comes to mind for me, Coach, is that you led by example. I mean, how old are you now, Coach? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, I'm 83. I'm 83. And John, it's so great. I'm still able to run and swim and lift weights and be active. I'm so grateful for my health.
Yeah, you look great for 83, by the way. But yeah, like even when, man, this had to been at least what, almost over 10 years ago. I mean, you already retired as a teacher and you were still running with us. on those long runs. So just by seeing you going out there with us, I thought that was also, pretty important as a leader. So that was a
Yeah,
pretty.
I'm very fortunate to be, I never ran some people run marathons and I never ran big races like that. I just ran, shorter distance, but on a regular basis. And so I'm very, running's always been a great part of my life, and it still is. I would say jogging now, Joe John, not running, jogging.
Hey, you look great though, Coach. The other question I wanted to ask, I know you briefly touched upon this. Why did you become a coach in the first place, and what now?
Good question, John. I played 4 years of college basketball, and I played on different teams. And so competition and being on a team was really important part of my life. And so I wanted to stay in that world of competitive sports. And I started out as a basketball coach because I was a basketball college player. And then there was not a basketball opening when I first got to Cheltenham, but there was a cross country. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Actually, I started cross country also in Pittman, New Jersey. And so I continued with it. And I think it's also connected to my teaching, where I wanted to be, if possible, I wanted to be a positive part of a young person's development. And as a teacher and as a coach, you can do that. You can just be affirming to kids. I had a hard time growing up, and I had a lot of failure in high school, and teachers were hard on me. I was a kid who developed very slowly. And so I always had a soft spot in my heart for teenagers because I think growing up is hard.
Mm.
And at least it was really hard for me. And so I always had a lot of empathy and sympathy for teenage kids, because I think you're dealing with a lot, and sometimes people don't know that, and they misjudge you, or they misread you, and they judge you harshly, and they think you're lazy, and maybe you are, but sometimes there's reasons why. So if I could have been a helpful part of a kid's life, either as a teacher or a coach, that was very appealing to me. And of course, there's a leadership position there. Teachers are leaders and coaches are leaders, and I think that was appealing too. So I think that's basically why I got into it, because I wanted to stay connected to sports, and I wanted to stay connected to kids, and also as like a basketball referee. I was a baseball coach. I was involved in sports. I coached my own kids when they were young. So I just saw you were in a great position to help people in that leadership position as a teacher or as a coach.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. So we're going to try to wrap up here. Do you have any parting words for your young listeners?
Well, parting words. Well, I know it's a hard time out there. People get discouraged, but I just feel like I believe that there's a positive force in the world. Don't give up on the world. We're not here alone. Just try to be good to yourself. Oh yeah, here's good advice. Don't ever get down on yourself. There's enough people in life who will do that for you. So don't get down on yourself. You're going to make mistakes. We are all at times struggling human beings, and we will absolutely fail. And we will fail time and time again. And then it's easy to say, oh, I'm a loser, and get into that negative self-talk. And that's all part of being human. We have strengths and weaknesses. We're going to do things right. We're going to do things wrong. But don't ever get down on yourself. That's too easy to do. And we all have this little nasty inner critic that can do that. So you can be careful of that, because you always have to be your own best friend. And I compare it to, imagine yourself in the middle of a circle and people are throwing rocks at you, and you decide to go and join them. And so you get in the circle, out of the middle, and you start throwing rocks at yourself. That's very, very easy to do. And you have a responsibility to yourself, never to get down on yourself, and to be your own best advocate. So I think that's one advice I would give. Don't judge yourself harshly, even when you mess up. You know what? Maybe you were doing the best you could at the time with the resources that you had. So don't judge yourself harshly. And if other people are going to judge you harshly, walk away like they don't understand. You've got to be your own best friend.
That's some powerful words. So thank you for that. Oh, I do have a random question. Coach,
Sure.
do you still drink the goat? Is it goat sperm or whatever? Do you still drink that?
John, John, that is that is so funny. Let's bring your listener in on that. Uh, First of all,
Is it
it
goat
was a
sperm? I
joke.
forgot if it was goat
Yeah, it
pee
was good
sperm.
sperm.
Okay,
And
okay.
the kids knew I was healthy, so I would say, I go to a local health food store,
Yeah.
and if you really want energy, you can buy like 16 ounces of goat sperm, and it's very, very expensive, but you wouldn't believe the boost you get from that. It's like, and so I would say, goat sperm is a great health drink. And the kids would look at me like, oh, goat sperm? I don't know, coach. And I said, well, check it out. I actually had kids go to like a Jenkintown health food store and try to get goat sperm. There's no goat sperm. You can't drink goat sperm. It's not out there for sale on the market. But I got so much mileage out of that. It was really funny. And my daughter went to college, and one kid came up and said, your dad was a really good teacher, but he really had some disgusting health habits. And she said, what do you mean? He said, he drinks goat sperm. She said, oh, that was a joke. Don't you realize none of that was true?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah. We were all like I remember the whole team was we were just like baffled when we heard that. We were like, what?
That's another thing, John. Sometimes people don't realize when I'm kidding, because I'm seen as a pretty serious person, and I can have that serious persona, but underneath I'm having fun with people.
Oh man, that was the problem. That was the problem for me at least. So the truth has officially come out. The truth has officially come out.
Exactly, right.
All right, so parting last question. Where can our listeners find you?
It's funny. Once in a while, I'll speak to groups. Like I spoke to a couple teams last summer. I went to a cross country camp, and one of my former students had me speak to his future teacher. So they can get me on a teamnoother.com. If they go to, Google a teamnoother.com, and I have a website out there, and if they want, or they can write me at Tom_Sexton@Hotmail. I love to hear from people. Tom_Sexton@Hotmail.
And I'll link it in the description below so that people can follow you.
And John, I want to honor you for giving back to the community. I think it's wonderful. You're exactly what I was talking about, where you're developing yourself, but you are giving back to others too. And even is this a podcast we're talking about, or a Instagram?
It's more for video content. So I'll be posting it like on my social media, and then I believe the Cheltenham Alumni Network. I'll post it in there as well. So you'll get a lot of exposure from from the community.
Yeah. And is your community mostly a Korean community?
Yeah, so most of my personal community who I like interact with is from the Korean community. I'm also serving in a predominantly Korean church. We don't view ourselves as a Korean church,
Right.
but naturally we came from the roots of the background of a Korean community church. So that is where I serve there. I also am pretty well connected within with different areas, not just Cheltenham. So
Right.
I thought
That's
this was
great.
great content.
Yeah. Anytime. I'm always available as a speaker. So anytime you want, if I can come to your community and talk about whatever, just give me a little call.
Of course, of course. This is awesome. Like this is so great. I feel blessed, and just sharing this moment with you. Thank you very much.
John, I can't thank you enough. You made my day, and keep up the good work.
All right, thanks, Coach. You take care of yourself. All right.
Take care. Bless
All
you.
right.